All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua Ba'ashem HaKadosh. Double honors to my apostles and elders of Ray Millstone. They're doing it real well. Peace and blessings to the elect. This is Brother Dawadah from GMS Detroit Camp coming at you with another video through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua Ba'ashem HaKadosh. Today I want to do another video going in on this snap cut, which is supposed to happen November 1st, I believe that's when it begins. All right, Lord's will this to be edifying, which this should be another in transit. Now, the most recent report is that the Trump administration, rather the government, they're saying that Trump cannot just cut SNAP. All right, they're saying that they're going to tap into some emergency funding in order to pretty much allow the people to still use SNAP, all right? And according to what, I've heard, that's only supposed to last up to 2 weeks, so when you think about it, the elder brother Shakam from the Great Millstone Detroit Camp brought out an excellent point during the sit-down, the weekly sit-down, that, if they give out these resources that they have in the cut, then guess what? When those resources are depleted, then what? Then what happens? Well, guess what? Now people are in the state of lacking. Now they're like, okay, well, shoot, we didn't use all the resources that we had saved up. No, we still need our food, and that can lead to riots. And like the elder brother brought out, if they present people with that CHIP, as a means of getting, food. Let's say they say, well, you know what, look, if you get this CHIP, instead of, you reloading up your card so you can go to the store and use your SNAP benefits, now we're going to put it on your chip. And guess what? If you get this chip, we're going to throw in an extra $50 a month. Man, people will flock to that. These people will flock to that. That's just an example of how, easily these devils can get this thing kicked off. All right, because we're definitely within the time of prophecy, and one of the last prophecies we're waiting for to take place is that MOTB. All right, so with this whole SNAP thing, and what they're saying is pretty much that they're gonna basically bail the people out for a couple weeks. But the real question is, what happens after that if the government stays closed? That's the real question. All right, which the article that I showed you before, all right, I'll go back to it. Look at what they're saying. They're saying that the cuts to SNAP are going to really, really, really hurt, all right, families of color. Beginning with primarily you so-called Negroes. They're saying, look, if we cut this, y'all are the ones that's going to feel this the most, which is pure BS. Because who are the ones that primarily rely on SNAP? The so-called white man, all right? They say, according to Google, according to, I believe the report was done in 2023, that about 26% of so-called blacks / African Americans rely on SNAP. All right, but it says over 37% of so-called whites, all right, above 37% of so-called whites rely on SNAP. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers of blacks is actually lower. I wouldn't be surprised, because they could easily have lumped in, Ham, because he looks black, and they could easily just lump Ham up in with Jake, all right? And when I say Jake, in this case, I'm specifically referring to the so-called Negro. They could easily have lumped in Ham in there, just to inflate the numbers even more, if those numbers are even accurate, all right? So the point being that what? The point being that, it's really the so-called white man that predominantly is on this government assistance, all right, SNAP specifically, not the so-called Negro. But they want to paint the narrative as if it's Jake out here that just, Jake can't do without, Jake really needs it, Jake down bad. Now, don't get me wrong, Jake is down bad, and definitely, those SNAP benefits do indeed assist Jake pursuant to Deuteronomy the 20th chapter. You shall go to the enemies for the want of all things. Literally everything we need, we got to go to the heathen for. All right. So he owns these different businesses, these different companies, right? And we need things, and we got to go to him to get it. That indeed is true. And best believe that those different programs helps us get, things, all right, whether it's food or clothing or whatever. But we are not the primary ones on it. It's actually the so-called white men that are actually primarily on it. So this is really BS. It's going to disproportionately affect people of color. No, wait a minute. It's the majority of people that's on Snap is actually the so-called whites. So-called. So that's BS. But everything has always got to be targeting Jake. Just like with that C-19. What did they say? They said that it was really the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. They were categorizing us and saying it was literally those three groups that were suffering the most from the C-19. This devil, he got to go. The scripture says, woe unto them, Micah 2:1, woe unto them that wake up and practice evil, because it is in the power of their hands, roughly paraphrasing. They wake up thinking about wickedness. Scripture says they can't even go to sleep unless they've done wickedness. All right, we watched the series like the brother Nabala from the Great Millstone Detroit camp brought out, during the sit down today. When you watch movies like The Simpsons and shows like that where they show you these super duper rich sitting on this big ass table. It's usually like a long table that they show. And, they start laughing. They all have an evil laugh. They meet up in this dark, and they talk about how, they want to oppress the people or what they're going to do next to oppress the people. All right. Those things are really happening. All right. But people, they just see everything as entertainment. Oh, this is just funny. Oh, no, they're just being comedic. But no, the word comedy, like the apostles bring out, the word comedy goes back to, I believe it's the Spanish word, comida. Yeah, it's the Spanish word comida, meaning food, which I believe that Spanish word probably goes back to the Latin. But nevertheless, it means food. And what are they really giving you? Food for thought. When you watch these different comedians, Dave Chappelle, if you ever watch Bernie Mac, Cat Williams, so on and so forth, the funniest type of comedy is really the comedy that is you can learn something from or has a deep message behind it. That's the most funniest, not most funniest. That's the funniest type of comedy because there's something you can really learn from it. It's like a real event or a real situation that has taken place or does take place, that's really serious, but they make a joke out of it, which is called satire. You take something serious, but you kind of like present it in like a joking, funny manner, So that's the best type of comedy, but it's really food for thought, and that's what makes these different comedians, the best comedians, they're really good at that. Hit your Cat Williams, your Dave Chappelle's, your Bernie Macs. They're good at taking real life events, things that everyone goes through. All right, a lot of times things of which that are really serious, but they present it in a way where it's funny, So likewise with the main point being that you're getting food for thought when you watch these different shows, because there's really a message behind it. And we know that that's how Esau moves. All right? We're not ignorant. 2 Corinthians 2:11. All right? We're not ignorant of Satan's devices. We know how Satan gets down, We know exactly how he gets down. All right? His problem, reaction, solution, his order, KO, his predictive programming. We know about these different things. All right? Now, another key thing to look out for, because really what they're trying to do, they're trying to get the people roused up, all right? And they like pushing everyone's buttons. It's like when you poke the sleeping bear. Here it is. They didn't made you think that they just say, oh, the government might shut down. It might not shut down. Oh, the government shut down. Oh, my goodness. Then, SNAP benefits. Oh, it might get cut. It might not get cut. It might get cut. It might not get cut. It constantly keeps the people's stress levels at this extremely high state. Now they say, oh, well, look, we're going to bail you out, but only for a couple weeks. People don't know what to think. Esau is literally, you know, um, he's literally destroying, to put in the most PC way. He's literally messing people's minds up to where they're not at rest because they're constantly thinking, oh man, they don't have rest for their souls here within America, Babylon the Great. Truly this is not our rest. And for you Jakes out there, you tribes, you should understand that, look, America was not set up so that you can prosper. All right, America was never set up for you to prosper. America was never set up for you to be comfortable. And this threat of taking away your benefits, like your SNAP, that should show you that. They can take any and everything away at the drop of a dime, and you can't do nothing about it. All right? All of a sudden, you got these news articles posted about, oh, there might be a riot at Walmart. Needless to say that was some baseless rumor. It's not true. All right, so you see here, it says, this is a Reach My Destination. Grab a couple scripts. So SNAP is going to harm families of color, allegedly, right? But in reality, you look up who primarily is on SNAP by race. Okay, let's really look into this. All right. Whites, 35 to 37%. You see? But they want to claim that it's you Negroes, Which, once again, they threw in black. So I wouldn't be surprised, once again, if they threw in, Ham Dusty stuff up in there. Threw Ham up in there just to inflate the numbers, if those numbers are even accurate to begin with. But Esau likes to push the narrative that, oh yeah, it's you Jakes that are so poor, that you can't do nothing for yourselves. We just got to take care of you. Every time someone thinks of WIC, Section 8, food stamps, SNAP, EBT, they always think of a so-called black woman. Here it is. The whites are really the main ones on it. When I say whites, I mean so-called white. All right? But ultimately, this just shows you that we just got to get out of here. All right? Esau, he has that perpetual hatred. He's never going to let it go. That's why he pushes that narrative. Ezekiel 35:5, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred. Esau has a perpetual hatred. For who? For you Jakes, and has shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword, in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Said thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Yeah. And that's Esau's track record. He literally leaves a blood trail any and everywhere he goes. Look what he did to Gad. Slaughtered Gad to near extinction. Brought the southern kingdom over here. Look how many slaves died just trying to make it over here. Having the slaves packed like sardines in inhumane conditions. Saying that Jake is 3/5 of a man. These are the things that Esau has done. But payback is coming. And not from us, but rather from the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. He's going to be the one to put pause on Esau. All right? All we got to do is just prophesy. All right? In the kingdom, that's when the Lord allows, Revelation 13:10. But until then, look, we just wait on Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua to deliver us out of this lowest state that we're in and to avenge us of our adversaries. So yeah, watch out for this whole SNAP thing. We'll see what tomorrow brings, which is supposed to be the first. Allegedly they're discussing, which I showed you that here, this whole bailout, with them trying to, help out. Federal judge orders SNAP administration to pay SNAP. Oh, Slovakia. Federal judge orders Trump administration to pay SNAP benefits out of contingency fund. I wonder how long that contingency fund is actually going to last. All right. So with that, I pray this is edifying. All right. Our praises, our honors, and our glories be unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rahakwadash. Nebular Shmai Pastor Neil Jerry Millstone. Peace, blessings to the elect. Shalom.